Not here, please, not here. Eleanor Thompson watched in horror as her old Ford sputtered and died right in front of the Rusty Mug, Riverdale's most notorious biker bar. Steam billowed from under the hood as dusk settled. What happened next brought her to tears and would change lives in ways no one could have predicted. Hi everyone, welcome to Tales Unveiled. Let's dive in. Eleanor was a 67-year-old widow who dedicated 40 years to teaching second grade at Riverdale Elementary before retiring 3 years ago. Unlike many of her friends who'd migrated to warmer climates or retirement communities, Eleanor had stayed put in Riverdale. This was home, where every street corner held cherished memories with her late husband, Arthur. Thursday evenings were a ritual for Eleanor, volunteering at the community center's food pantry, then driving home to the little blue house she and Arthur had bought as newlyweds. She'd always take the same familiar route, carefully avoiding the rougher parts of town. But tonight, roadwork on Main Street had forced a detour. It'll be fine, she'd reassured herself earlier, meticulously planning an alternate route home, just a few extra blocks. I'll be through that area in minutes. Her plan had been flawless until the temperature gauge on her dashboard suddenly shot into the red zone, followed by a dreadful grinding noise from under the hood and a plume of steam that signaled the end of her journey. Now, here she was, stranded outside the Rusty Mug, a place decent folks in Riverdale pretended didn't exist. Eleanor had heard all the stories over the years, bar fights spilling into the streets, drug deals, the roar of motorcycles at all hours disrupting the peace. The local paper rarely mentioned the place without words like notorious or trouble attached. Eleanor fumbled in her purse for her cell phone. Dead, of course. She'd meant to charge it at the community center but had been sidetracked helping an elderly gentleman with his grocery boxes. Now she was alone, with no way to call for help, as darkness deepened around her. Through the bar's grimy windows, she could see shadowy figures moving inside. The heavy beat of rock music throbbed rhythmically, occasionally punctuated by raucous laughter. Beyond the row of motorcycles, the sidewalk was deserted. This part of town emptied out quickly after dark. Maybe someone else will drive by, Eleanor whispered to herself, but even as the words left her mouth, she knew it was wishful thinking. This wasn't a through street, the only people coming down this road were heading to the Rusty Mug. A burst of louder music startled her as the bar's door swung open. A large man with a shaggy beard stepped outside, followed by two others. All three wore leather vests covered in patches Eleanor couldn't quite make out in the dimming light. One of them pointed at her car, then nudged his companions. Eleanor's heart pounded as the three men started walking toward her. She quickly checked that her doors were locked, then chided herself for the action. What good would locked doors do if they really wanted to get in? A tap on her window made her jump. The largest of the three men, bearded with tattooed arms visible beneath his leather vest, was gesturing for her to roll down the window. "You all right in there, ma'am?" His voice was muffled through the glass. Eleanor hesitated, then lowered her window a cautious inch. "My car broke down," she said, hating the slight tremor in her voice. "My phone's dead. I was just figuring out what to do next." The man nodded, glancing at the steam still rising from her hood. "Mind if I take a look? I'm pretty good with engines." Before Eleanor could respond, a second man leaned into view. He was younger, with a neatly trimmed beard and kind eyes that reminded Eleanor of her late husband. "Danny's the best mechanic in the county, ma'am. Built half the bikes out front from scratch," the younger man said. Something in his expression, earnest without a hint of threat, made Eleanor's decision for her. "That would be very kind, thank you." She popped the hood release and cautiously stepped out of her car. Up close, the three men were even more intimidating, tall and broad-shouldered, their vests now clearly displaying the Iron Horseman MC patch that had fueled so many local rumors. The one called Danny was already examining her engine, his hands moving confidently among the components. "Blown radiator hose," he announced after a moment. "Happens a lot with these older models. Easy enough to patch temporarily, but you'll need a replacement soon." "Can it be fixed?" Eleanor asked, hovering uncertainly a few feet away. "Sure can," Danny nodded. "Got the tools in my truck." He addressed the youngest of the three, Mikey. "Run inside and grab my toolbox from behind the bar, would you? And see if Sal's got any radiator fluid." As Mikey jogged back to the bar, Danny turned to Eleanor with a reassuring smile that looked strange beneath his intimidating beard. "Should have you back on the road in about 20 minutes or so, ma'am. I'm Danny Miller, by the way." He extended a grease-stained hand. "Eleanor Thompson," she replied, shaking his hand cautiously. "I appreciate your help, Mr. Miller. Just Danny, please. This here's Tom." He nodded toward the third man, who tipped his head in greeting. The bar door opened again, and Eleanor was startled to see what looked like half the bar's patrons streaming out onto the sidewalk. Men and women, all in similar leather vests or jackets, moved toward them with purpose. Eleanor tensed instinctively, stepping back toward her car. Danny noticed her reaction and chuckled. "Don't worry, Mrs. Thompson, news travels fast at the Rusty Mug. Everyone's just coming to see if they can help. For you, a free like is easy. But for me, it is the greatest support and encouragement. For this video, can you give me 1 like and 1 subscription? Thank you very much." "Got the toolbox?" Mikey called, making his way through the growing crowd. Behind him, a stocky man with a completely bald head carried a container of green fluid. "Perfect timing, Sal," Danny said, taking the fluid. "Everyone, this is Mrs. Thompson. Her radiator hose blew." To Eleanor's amazement, the gathered bikers immediately organized themselves like a well-drilled team. 2 men brought over portable work lights from somewhere inside the bar. A woman about Eleanor's age approached with a folding chair. "No sense standing around while they fix your car, honey," she said, setting up the chair a safe distance from the now crowded engine compartment. "I'm Darlene, by the way. Danny's boss lady." She winked, and Eleanor realized she must be Danny's wife. "Would you like something to drink while you wait?" Darlene asked. "Water? Coffee? We just made a fresh pot." "Water would be lovely, thank you," Eleanor said, still trying to reconcile the scene before her with everything she'd heard about the Rusty Mug and its patrons. As Darlene headed back inside, Eleanor settled into the chair, watching in fascination as Danny directed the impromptu repair crew with quiet authority. Someone had brought out a small radio, and classic rock played softly in the background. The bikers worked with surprising efficiency, occasionally joking among themselves but mostly focused on the task at hand. "First time at the Mug?" A weathered-looking woman with silver hair tied in a long braid had appeared beside Eleanor's chair, offering a bottle of water. "Yes," Eleanor admitted, accepting the water gratefully. "I wasn't expecting all this." She gestured at the helpful crowd. The woman laughed. "I bet. Name's Carol. Been riding with the Iron Horseman for 20 years now. Most folks have us all wrong." "I'm starting to see that," Eleanor said honestly. Carol settled onto an overturned milk crate next to Eleanor's chair. "Most of us are just regular people who love motorcycles and the freedom of the road. Danny over there works at the Harley dealership during the day. Mikey's a nurse at County General. I retired from teaching at Riverdale High last year." "You taught at Riverdale?" Eleanor straightened in surprise. "I taught 2nd grade at the elementary school for 40 years. "No kidding. You must be that Mrs. Thompson." Carol's face lit up. "My son had you back in '98. Jason Reynolds. Scrawny kid, always had his nose in a book." "Jason!" Eleanor exclaimed, memory clicking into place. "Of course. He wrote that wonderful poem about his grandfather's farm that won the county competition." From there, the conversation flowed easily. Eleanor learned that many of the Iron Horsemen were veterans, tradespeople, or held regular jobs. They weren't the dangerous outlaws she'd imagined but a tight-knit community drawn together by their love of motorcycles and the sense of brotherhood it fostered. "Almost done, Mrs. Thompson," Danny called over, wiping his hands on a shop rag. "Just letting the engine cool a bit before we finish up. Should be good as new in about 10 minutes. Eleanor nodded her thanks, then turned back to Carol. "I really can't thank you all enough. I don't know what I would have done if—" A sudden commotion near the bar's entrance interrupted her. Eleanor looked over to see a young woman hurrying toward Danny, phone clutched in her hand. Danny's expression changed instantly as he took the phone, stepping away from the group to talk. Even from a distance, Eleanor could see the worry etching deep lines into his face. "Everything okay?" Eleanor asked Carol quietly. Carol's previously cheerful expression sobered. "That's Lisa, Danny's daughter-in-law. Probably calling about little Mikey." "Little Mikey? Danny's grandson?" Eleanor asked. Carol's voice lowered. 8 years old and fighting leukemia. Been in and out of treatment for the past year. Danny's son, Big Mikey, works offshore on an oil rig to cover the medical bills, so Danny and Lisa share care duties. Eleanor's heart sank. "That's terrible. Is there anything they can do for him?" "There's a treatment they're trying to get him into, some new protocol that's showing real promise for his type of leukemia. The problem is, insurance won't cover it since it's still experimental. They're about $8,000 short, and the treatment slot opens next month." Eleanor watched as Danny handed the phone back to Lisa, his shoulders slumped. He said something Eleanor couldn't hear, then straightened himself visibly before returning to the car. "Everything okay?" Mikey asked. Concerned. "Fine," Danny said firmly, but Eleanor could hear the strain beneath the word. "Just a little fever. Lisa's got it under control now. Let's finish up this radiator so Mrs. Thompson can get home." True to his word, the car was running again 10 minutes later. The temporary patch on the hose looked professional, and Danny had topped off her radiator fluid. "This will get you home safely," he explained, closing the hood with a solid thunk, "but you'll want to get a permanent replacement in the next few days. Old hoses like these tend to break down all at once." "I don't know how to thank you," Eleanor said, genuinely moved by the unexpected kindness she'd received. "Please let me pay you for your time and the materials." Danny waved away her offer immediately. "Wouldn't dream of it, ma'am. Glad we could help." "At least let me contribute to your club fund or something," Eleanor insisted, opening her purse. "It's only right." "Tell you what," Danny said with a kind smile, "next time you're at that community center, help someone extra. That's payment enough for us." As the gathered bikers began dispersing back to the bar, Eleanor impulsively grabbed a pen and notepad from her purse. "Let me give you my number," she said, scribbling it down. "In case you ever need anything. It's the least I can do." Danny seemed surprised but accepted the paper with a nod of thanks. Eleanor climbed into her now functional car, waving goodbye to Carol and Darlene, who'd come back outside to see her off. As she pulled away from the Rusty Mug, the group of bikers who'd helped her stood watching, making sure she got safely on her way. Eleanor's mind was racing as she drove the remaining blocks to her home. Everything she thought she knew about the Rusty Mug and its patrons had been turned upside down in a single evening. And the story about little Mikey. She couldn't stop thinking about that brave little boy and his family's struggle. By the time she pulled into her driveway, Eleanor had made a decision. The next morning found Eleanor in the church office, speaking earnestly with Pastor Jim, the leader of her congregation for the past 15 years. "I'm telling you, Jim, they were nothing like what we've heard. They helped me without hesitation, refused payment, and they're dealing with this terrible situation with their little boy." Pastor Jim leaned back in his chair, regarding Eleanor with mild skepticism. "I don't doubt your experience, Eleanor, but the Rusty Mug has a reputation for a reason. There have been incidents over the years." "Maybe so," Eleanor conceded, "but the people I met last night were kind, decent folks who helped a stranger in need. Isn't that what we preach about every Sunday? Looking beyond appearances to see the heart?" The pastor sighed, knowing when he was beaten. Eleanor Thompson had taught half the town's children and commanded respect throughout the community. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A fundraiser," Eleanor said promptly, "for little Mikey's treatment. Our church has the resources to organize it quickly. We could hold it in 2 weeks. That's enough time to spread the word but still meet their deadline." By that afternoon, Eleanor had assembled a small committee of church members willing to help. Not everyone was enthusiastic about supporting a family associated with the notorious biker bar, but Eleanor's determination wore down the resistance. If you could have seen their faces when they talked about that little boy, she told her friend Patricia, who'd initially objected. They're just people trying to save their child, no different than any of us would be. For you, a free like is easy. But for me, it is the greatest support and encouragement. For this video, can you give me 1 like and 1 subscription? Thank you very much. Over the next few days, Eleanor threw herself into organizing the fundraiser with the same energy she'd once devoted to her classroom. She collected donations for a silent auction, arranged for food, and personally visited local businesses to request contributions. By the end of the week, the event was taking shape nicely, but something was still bothering her. "I haven't told them yet," she admitted to Pastor Jim during their planning meeting. "I'm worried they'll refuse the help out of pride." "You need to let them know, Eleanor," he advised. "This isn't just about the money, it's about building bridges in our community." Eleanor knew he was right. That evening, she drove back to the Rusty Mug, steeling herself as she parked in the same spot where her car had broken down the week before. The bar looked different in the early evening light, less intimidating somehow, though the line of motorcycles out front was just as impressive. Taking a deep breath, Eleanor pushed open the heavy wooden door and stepped inside. The interior of the Rusty Mug was a surprise. Rather than the dingy dive bar she'd expected, she found a well-maintained space with a long, polished bar running along one wall. Historic photographs of motorcycles and riders covered another wall, while a small stage in the corner suggested live music was a regular feature. The lighting was low but not gloomy, and the music playing was classic rock at a reasonable volume. Several heads turned as Eleanor entered, and she recognized a few faces. Carol spotted her from a table near the back and waved her over. "Eleanor, what brings you back to our humble establishment? Car trouble again?" "No, thank goodness." Eleanor smiled, settling into the chair Carol offered. "I was actually hoping to find Danny. Is he here tonight?" "In the back office doing the books," Carol replied, gesturing toward a door behind the bar. "Want me to get him for you?" "If you wouldn't mind. I need to speak with him about something important." While Carol went to fetch Danny, Eleanor tried to ignore the curious glances from the other patrons. She must have looked as out of place as she felt, a silver-haired woman in sensible slacks and a cardigan, clutching her handbag like a shield. A moment later, Danny emerged from the back, looking surprised but pleased to see her. "Mrs. Thompson, everything okay with your car?" "The car is fine, thanks to you," Eleanor assured him. "I was wondering if we could speak privately for a moment. It's about something important." Danny led her to a quiet corner booth, concern evident on his face. "Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," Eleanor said quickly. "Actually, I came to talk to you about little Mikey." Danny's expression immediately closed off. "What about him?" "I heard he needs a special treatment that insurance won't cover," Eleanor said gently, "and that your family is having trouble raising the remaining funds." Danny's jaw tightened. "With all due respect, Mrs. Thompson, that's a private family matter." "Who told you about that?" "It doesn't matter," Eleanor said. "What matters is that our church wants to help. We're organizing a fundraiser for little Mikey. Everything's arranged, silent auction, bake sale, donation drive. It's happening a week from Saturday." For a long moment, Danny just stared at her. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "I appreciate the thought, Mrs. Thompson, but we don't need charity. We take care of our own." "It's not charity, Danny," Eleanor said firmly. "It's community. You helped me when I needed it, no questions asked. Now it's my turn to help you. That's how communities work. We look out for each other." "You don't even know us," Danny protested, though Eleanor could hear his resolve weakening. "I know enough," she said simply. "I know you're a grandfather fighting for his grandson's life. I know you stopped to help a frightened old woman when you didn't have to. That tells me everything important about who you are." Danny looked away, visibly struggling with his pride. "It's a lot of money." "It's only money," Eleanor countered, "and there's a lot of it in this town. People just need a good reason to share it." After what seemed like an eternity, Danny nodded slowly. "All right. For little Mikey, I'll accept the help. But I want to contribute something in return. Maybe the club could provide security for your event or help with setup and cleanup." Eleanor beamed. "I think that's a wonderful idea." In fact, she hesitated, then plunged ahead with the idea that had been forming in her mind. "What would you think about hosting the fundraiser here at the Rusty Mug?" Danny's eyebrows shot up. "Here? You want to bring your church group to a biker bar?" "Why not?" Eleanor asked. "It would be meaningful, two parts of our community coming together for a good cause. Plus, it would give people a chance to see this place as it really is, not as they imagine it to be." The fundraiser held 2 weeks later at the Rusty Mug exceeded everyone's expectations. The Iron Horsemen had transformed their bar into a proper event space with colorful decorations and tables laden with donated items for the silent auction. The bikers themselves had cleaned and polished every surface until the place gleamed. Eleanor's church friends arrived tentatively at first, clearly uncomfortable in the unfamiliar surroundings, but as the evening progressed, the initial awkwardness gave way to genuine connection. Carol and Patricia discovered a shared passion for quilting. Pastor Jim and Tom, the biker who'd first helped Eleanor, both turned out to be Vietnam veterans and spent an hour swapping stories in a corner booth. Little Mikey himself made an appearance, a brave 8-year-old with a thin face but bright, curious eyes. He moved through the crowd in a wheelchair pushed by his mother, Lisa, charming everyone he met with his questions and observations. "He looks just like Danny around the eyes," Eleanor commented to Darlene as they watched the boy examining a model motorcycle someone had donated for the auction. "Got his grandfather's spirit too," Darlene agreed. "Stubborn as they come, won't quit fighting no matter how tough it gets." By the end of the evening, the fundraiser had collected nearly $12,000, far exceeding the $8,000 they'd hoped for. The extra money Danny decided would go toward a fund for other families facing similar struggles with childhood cancer. As the last guests departed and the cleanup began, Danny found Eleanor sitting quietly at the bar, looking tired but satisfied. "I don't know how to thank you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "What you did for little Mikey. For all of us," Eleanor reminded him. "The night my car broke down. This is just me returning the favor." Danny shook his head in wonder. "When your car died right in front of our place, I thought you were gonna have a heart attack from fear. Never imagined we'd end up here." Eleanor laughed softly. "Life has a way of surprising us, doesn't it? Sometimes our breakdowns lead us exactly where we need to be." The friendship between Eleanor Thompson and the Iron Horsemen continued long after little Mikey began his treatment. The fundraiser became an annual event, benefiting a different child in need each year. Eleanor became a regular visitor at the Rusty Mug, often bringing baked goods or simply stopping by to chat with her new friends. The bar itself began to change too. As word spread about the fundraiser and the true nature of its patrons, the Rusty Mug gradually shed its notorious reputation. New customers began to appear, curious at first, then returning because they enjoyed the welcoming atmosphere and sense of community. 1 year after her car broke down, Eleanor received a special gift from the Iron Horsemen, a leather vest of her own with a custom patch reading, "Honorary Iron Horse, Eleanor Teacher Thompson." She wore it proudly to every fundraiser thereafter, standing tall among her biker friends as they continued their joint mission of helping children in need. But perhaps the most meaningful change was in the town itself. The artificial boundaries that had divided Riverdale for generations, between respectable citizens and those they'd avoided, began to dissolve. People who would never have spoken to each other before found common ground in their humanity, proving that sometimes the most powerful connections begin with a simple act of kindness on a dark road. And it all started because Eleanor's car broke down in exactly the right place at exactly the right time, in front of a biker bar filled with people who knew that true strength isn't measured by intimidation, but by how willingly you help a stranger in need. Love this story? Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more. Don't forget to check out the video currently on your screen, you won't want to miss it. See you in the next one.